What's up, everyone? Aaron Nagler here with your Packers Daily Chat on Cheesehead TV. No Packer transplants today. Corey Behnke is out of town, but transplants will return tomorrow, Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. So hope you're around for that. Hope you stick around today. Lots of activity already in the chat. Trying to get questions from both YouTube and Facebook today. So stick with me if I get a little stumbled up a little bit. People talking about the game, asking about my title, about the offensive line. Can it hold up? Someone has already answered no. I think it can, in the sense that they need to have a game plan that gets the ball out of Aaron Rodgers' hands quickly. That's how they erased a 20-point deficit back in week 1. I think a large part of that was also due to Aaron Rodgers being stationary in the pocket, knowing he couldn't escape because he could barely run. Obviously, he's a little healthier this time around. We'll see what the game plan is. We'll see what the health is like. I don't have an injury report. The initial injury report was not out yet prior to our going live, but I think all eyes will be on the health of Brian Bulaga. Clearly, if Bulaga is unable to go, the prospect of Jason Spriggs facing down one Khalil Mack is frightening for any Packers fan. I need more no Zoom close-ups. Well, Ross, we'll see what we can do to facilitate that. Hi from Mexico. Well, hello. How are you? Good to see you. Let's see what's going on. What's up, Nagler? Any news on the O-line? Nothing yet. We're trying to endeavor to get some, news, to get the injury report, but nothing yet. Philbin's best and worst. So we will not be doing Joe's best and worst. Unfortunately, not enough time to gather assets and turn it around. But whoever the next coach is, will definitely be getting back to the best and worst videos every day after a game. Gilbert Brown for head coach. Thoughts? No. Are the Packers making the playoffs? Jessica, I wish I could tell you with certainty. If I could, I'd go to Vegas. I'd put a bunch of money on it. Fortunately, I can't. Obviously, Sunday's game is a humongous stepping stone. If it is to be, they're going to need to go into Chicago and win that game. And how they're going to do it, it's long odds. Let's put it that way. Now, I'm not saying they can't. I'm not saying it's impossible. But, it's really not worth discussing the playoffs until we see the result of Sunday's game. Even with a beat-up O-line, I like our chances to win the game. Hector, I hear you, man. I tell you what, hope springs eternal. Any diehard Packer fan wants to see them win, wants to see them have a chance. And I agree. I think even with, Byron Bell placed on injured reserve today, you got to think McCray probably steps in. Maybe they give Lucas Patrick a shot. I think, they can hold up and they can score. Maybe not a ton of points, but they can score enough to win this game. It's just a question of how the ball bounces and can they, basically keep Rodgers upright. I think is a big part of it. Why so few snaps for Tanyan and Kumaro? Jeff, that's a really good question, especially on the Tanyan side of things. Kumaro, I understand because, he hasn't been practicing up until a couple weeks ago. Throwing him in the middle of the fire, so to speak, in the middle of the season, that's a tough ask when you've got a ton of reps with the other guys in front of him. Now, that said, we've seen drops, we've seen miscommunication with Rodgers, etc. I would think they would ease him in eventually. You've seen him get a couple of snaps here and there, a few more each week he's been active, but I'd be surprised if you saw an abundance of him. As far as Tanyan goes, I posted this earlier today on Twitter. I'm just frustrated with their reliance on Jimmy Graham and how he was almost seemingly, it was pretty apparent, a focal point of the offensive game plan on Sunday. They kept going to him, Rodgers, they kept having him as the initial read. Rodgers kept finding him, and he couldn't pull it down. Mostly, you have to think, because of the thumb. Now, and I know he's been disappointing this year in some of the 50-50 balls, some of the red zone stuff, but for the most part, but prior to the thumb injury, when called upon, he did his job. But there are a couple of shots in that game against the Falcons where you can see he's just not able to latch onto the football because he doesn't have a working thumb. So to me, I think you got to get Tanyan out there. He's shown that he's reliable. He'll be where he's supposed to be. And most importantly, he catches everything thrown to him. We saw that throughout camp. I've seen, the big catch in Seattle, etc. Give the guy a chance, because right now I think you're hurting your football team with an over-reliance on a one-handed, basically, Jimmy Graham. How is the Bears defense so effective versus the Rams? Evan, the biggest thing to my eyes was the Rams' refusal, for whatever reason, to get to a quick rhythm passing game. They kept trying to push the ball down the field, and I understand that's who the Rams are, that's who they've been. Sometimes coaches get in that mentality of we're going to run our stuff and make you beat us. Well, that's what the Bears did, mostly because they were able to push the pocket so effectively and disrupt the quarterback. They didn't have to get sacks. They kept pushing offensive linemen into Jared Goff's lap. Joe Philbin mentioned it today in his press conference. There's the interception from out of their own end where the left tackle steps on Goff's foot while he's trying to, step into the throw. That causes the interception. You saw that play after play after play where Goff really didn't have a pocket to step up into. And that's a big reliance, a big part of his ability is stepping up into his throws and driving them with power, and he wasn't able to do that in Chicago. That's why I think it's so important to get the ball out of Rodgers' hands quickly. Even with a fully healthy offensive line, I think that would be paramount. And with the injuries along the offensive line, I think it's especially important this week. But I think more than anything, that's what the Bears were able to do. And they didn't have to send extra guys to do it. They were able to push the pocket with just 4 guys. That's when Fangio's defenses have been at their best. It was the case in San Francisco. It's the case right now in Chicago. And with that kind of pass rush up front, they're able to do a lot on the back end to kind of take stuff away, especially downfield. So get the ball out of your hands quickly. Lucas Patrick, my favorite player after the Falcons game brawl. I hear you. I loved his quote in the locker room this week about not taking any shit. I think we need a little bit more of that kind of attitude along the offensive line. Pound the ball with Jones this weekend, open up the quick slants. Darren, I don't know if it's as easy as pound the football with Jones, but I do think they need to feature him. They need to get the ball in his hands, get him in space, get the ball out of Aaron Rodgers' hands. But I don't mind the idea behind what the Packers were trying to do early on in that game with Jamal Williams when they were pounding the football with him. They liked that matchup. They liked what they saw on tape. I'm not sure that's an effective way to go about it against Chicago, but I do think the more you're relying on Jones and the less you're relying on Rodgers in this game is beneficial for the Packers. Does Morrison make the team next year? And if so, who plays more, him or Burks? Well, buddy, that's a long way away. I would think they would like Burks to take that jump. Obviously, Morrison's playing as much as he is because they haven't seen enough from Burks to warrant time on the field. But they did invest a pretty early pick on him, and you would think, that jump from year 1 to year 2, you'd like to see Burks get on the field. Now, all of that said, some of that will be down to who they hire as coach and what kind of scheme they're running. So as much as I know everyone likes to look forward, it's going to be hard to forecast a lot of that until we know who the coach is. Will our defense show up like last week, and is Clay Matthews back? Michael, that's a 2-part question. I'll take the second part first. I don't think Clay Matthews is quote-unquote back, if you're asking if he's back to the player he was when he was terrorizing quarterbacks and being a league sack leader, etc. I do think he is an effective piece in this defense. I think he hasn't really gone anywhere in that regard. I don't think he's disappeared. I think there are games where he's a little bit more productive than others, but I think he's always been an athletic force and a guy that offenses have to kind of know. They have to maybe not game plan for, but they have to know where he is, down in and down out, because he still has the ability to wreck things for an offense, and he still has the ability to work pretty well on some of those stunts. You saw him get a sack against the Falcons where Kenny Clark basically set it up and he screamed around the middle for the sack. He's still got the athleticism to cause some problems for opposing offenses. Let's head over to the old tweet machine, see what's on the minds of folks on the old Twitter. Brett starts us off with, what are your thoughts on Geronimo? I see a lot of people question whether or not he will make the team next year. Brett, he's scheduled to be a restricted free agent. I'd be very, very surprised if they did anything other than bring him back. I think his rapport with Aaron Rodgers is, number one, his best attribute. He's always where he's supposed to be, knows the offense like the back of his hand. Of course, some of that will be, what offense are they running? But I think he's comparatively dirt cheap. And like I said, Rodgers trusts him implicitly. So for those 2 reasons alone, I think he's definitely going to be back. Paul asks, are you of the belief of McCarthy's approach of not calling players out in the press? One of the things I really respected about McCarthy, he almost never called someone out. Paul, I mean, you have to respect it. No doubt about it. Whether it could be frustrating at times, absolutely. But the only time I really ever remember him, maybe in one other time, but the only real true time he kind of called somebody out in the press was that second year, I believe, of Eddie Lacy's career, at the end of year press conference when he point blank out in the open said Lacy needed to lose weight and work on, and become more dedicated to his craft. That was pretty much the only time he overtly called someone out in the press. Other than that, yeah, I think clearly throughout the years, 12 has taken many a passive-aggressive shot at McCarthy in public. McCarthy never rose to it, never met it, always took the high road, and I'll always respect him for that, no doubt. If McKenzie comes back, what role do you see him filling? Does he report to Goot or Murphy? You would have to think he would report to Gutekunst. Definitely not Murphy. Are we going to hear who the Packers are interviewing for the head coaching job, or do they keep it on the down low? Dylan, they won't announce it. Some teams do, actually. Some teams' Twitter accounts put it out when they're in the building. They announce, we are interviewing so-and-so. The Packers haven't done that in the past. Maybe that changes. I doubt it. But it will get out. That will be reported by the press, whether it's the national press or the local guys. It will undoubtedly get out. There's just nothing to report as of yet. But as soon as there is, you can bet those names will start trickling out. Tanking? Some football fans value draft picks more than success, as they don't understand that success is way, way, way more valuable to a franchise than picks can ever be. They have never rooted for an European football team in order to realize that. Tomas, I'll have to take your word for that. Not quite sure the correlation there, but yes, you are correct. Success is key, much more so than hoping for draft picks. Jeff says, Winston Moss, didn't hear a word from him for years, and after getting canned, he can't shut up. Was he a good coach or McCarthy hanger-on, in your opinion? Man, it's really hard to ever get any kind of real, true indication how effective and how good certain coaches are as assistants, just because we're not privy to most of what they do. That said, it sure seemed like he was a bit of a hanger-on. He did survive multiple kind of bloodlettings on the McCarthy staffs. He was always kept around. McCarthy kind of kept elevating him right up until he became associate head coach. As far as is he a good coach? I mean, many of the guys who have gone through Green Bay swear by him, love him as a coach, and he's had some success on his watch. So for every kind of weird press conference, you can talk to a player who swears that he's an excellent coach. So that's about all you can really say about Winston Moss at this point. Let's head back over to the live chat. Anthony's saying, didn't he call out Randall too, or hinted that he needed to get his own affairs in order? Anthony, if you think that's calling someone out in the press after they literally quit on a team on national television on Thursday night, he was asked about it, and he could have really laid into the guy. Maybe that's calling him out. I wouldn't consider that calling the guy out. He was answering a question, but I guess that's kind of nitpicking. Do you think Gutekunst will want to keep Petten? Bob, that's probably mostly not up to Gutekunst. It will be, if they hire an offensive coach, Petten is still under contract. I would think Murphy and Gutekunst would say whoever they hired, if you'd like to keep Petten around, you can. If you'd like to bring in your own guy, you're allowed to do that as well. But I don't think he's going to, he could conceivably, it's in the realm of possibility that they say to whoever they hire, you have to keep Petten as your defensive coordinator. That may make the job a little less attractive to certain people, but it's a possibility. I would tend to doubt it. Who do you think returns punts Sunday? Patrick, I think after Jair's kind of adventures or misadventures, if you will, there's a good chance Randall Cobb ends up back there. Although I'd still like to see Jair get another chance. Josh Jones seems to be playing well in his blitzing / linebacker role. Ryan, I agree. He's still prone to the occasional overrun, missed tackle, etc. But I think he's getting what he needs, which is playing time, reps on the field in live action. At this point, more than anything, that's what he needs. Let's see. Why does the media paint Rodgers as a superstar diva? McCarthy definitely coached Rodgers into shape. Are those the same question? Why does the media paint Rodgers as a superstar diva? I don't think the media does that. If anything, the media fawns over Rodgers. I mean, Bob McGinn certainly doesn't paint Rodgers as a superstar diva. Moss's interviews are good. I'm a fan after hearing them. Well, that's good, Gary. I love that fatherly stance of McCarthy creating trust with his players. I mean, that's ultimately what he did. He knew that by not ripping guys and not bringing dirty laundry into the public eye, he had those guys, he earned their trust. And that's why he most likely got that standing ovation when he addressed the team one last time after being fired. You know, a lot of guys in that locker room really liked McCarthy, and I think they're really going to miss him. Are the new linemen going to get any playing time? Guy, if you're talking about Saragusa, who they just picked up off the practice squad in Baltimore, I would doubt he sees much action. I think he's mostly there as a emergency backup. They need bodies at this point. But probably it'll be either McCray or Patrick at right guard, Taylor if he's able to go at left guard. But if Taylor can't go, it's probably Patrick and McCray again with Saragusa backing up, which is kind of a scary proposition. Do you think our defense can become a top 10, maybe top 5 unit in the next couple of years? I mean, a lot of that depends on who ends up being the coach. I think the talent is there. I think they've got a really fun, promising nucleus with Kenny Clark, Jair Alexander, Martinez, Josh Jones, and Josh Jackson if he can turn it around, Kevin King. He continues to develop and can finally stay healthy. I mean, there's stuff to work with there. Obviously, they need some pass rush. They need some outside help. But I like the way it's headed, talent-wise. They just need more help and to figure out who the coach is. Nothing better than Packers-Bears in December. Apollo, I agree. And you know what I love is that the game, as much as crazy as this might sound, the game actually means something. Like, I know the Packers' playoffs hopes and chances are very, very, very remote. And I know the Bears are a good team. They got a great defense. But it's been so rare. The real kind of competition between these two teams when both teams have something to play for and are at least watchable. I don't know if I'd call the Packers good right now. But, I mean, they've been so few and far between. Obviously, there was the NFC Championship game. But, for so long, it was either the Bears were really good and the Packers sucked, or the Packers were really good and the Bears sucked. And just to have a game that means a lot in December, in the cold, I love it. I'm with you, man. I love it. Mo Wilkerson, says Garrett. And Mike Daniels. Oh, you're listing guys who they can build around. I mean, Wilkerson, he might not even be here next year. He's on a 1-year deal. And Mike Daniels, I mean, I don't think he's, a guy you're going to build around long term. Coming off IR, going to head into, I believe, the 3rd year of his deal. Obviously, he could be here 4 or 5 years down the line, but the NFL, looking around the NFL, would suggest probably not. How would Josh McDaniels' offense make life easier for Rodgers if he were the next head coach? Michael, he would have so many more clean, delineated looks and plays where he's tasked with just getting the ball out of his hands quickly. I don't know how much of that is just Brady's brilliance and how much of that is McDaniels being able to draw stuff up and forcing Brady, so to speak, to get it to those guys. But, you look at the cut-ups from Brady's games and you see so many easy completions. You see so many spots where he's just hitting running backs and the running backs are getting 4, 5, 6 yards. And it's like, that's all you need to do, especially as you get older. Stop relying on getting outside the pocket and pushing the ball downfield so much. If McDaniels could come in and get Rodgers to do that, that would be probably the biggest help. And then on occasions when things are covered and or break down, then let Rodgers go to work. But I think that is kind of the appeal for bringing McDaniels in, is that he would make life easier for Aaron Rodgers, where it's been pretty difficult these last few years. What's an old-fashioned? Ryan, don't start. Thank God Banky's not here. Clowney in free agency. Anton, I get asked about this a lot. It's a possibility. I wouldn't dismiss it out of hand. A lot will depend on what their salary cap situation looks like. I would tend to doubt it, but you never say never. I think with 2 first-round picks, boatload of cap space. They've got to, push the envelope a little bit this offseason, and maybe Clowney's a part of that. But I would think, this is just guesswork on my part, obviously, but I would think with the mountains of cap space that other teams have. I mean, the Packers have a healthy cap situation, and they're going to have a lot to play with this offseason. But there are some teams that just have ridiculous amounts. I think there's a pretty good chance that someone throws absurd amounts of money at Clowney. And I don't think Gutekunst, as you saw with the Khalil Mack thing, I don't think he's going to go all in for just one guy. I can see Dallas Cowboys fans sweating if we make it. Oh, how exquisite would that be if Rodgers went down to Dallas and ended their season again. All right, let's not get ahead of ourselves. How different would the season have been if Philbin did the play calling? I don't know, Katie. I mean, let's get a few more bits and pieces to work with as far as sample size before we start saying that Philbin has solved everything. You still saw the offense kind of prone to breakdowns and third down, although they were much more efficient on third down against the Falcons. Not ready to say Philbin's unlocked the code, so to speak. But, I mean, the early returns are promising. There's no doubt about it. Do you think Aaron Jones can actually run against that defense as a changeup more than as a primary back? That's why earlier I was saying I don't think it's as simple as you have to pound the Bears with the running game. I do think, some misdirection stuff, maybe some traps, things that invite the pressure upfield you try and take advantage of. But to me, it's much more about using the quick rhythm passing game to set up the running game, where you use it as a change of pace. You've seen them do that throughout the years to great effect when they've chosen to, and I think this is a game that really calls for it. Really liked Bomani on the watch party Sunday. Thanks, Mike. It was great to have Bomani in. He had a great time. We had a ball. Thanks so much for watching it. And make sure you're watching this week. By the way, speaking of the watch party, it'll be me and Banky this weekend. I invited Big Cat to watch, but he chickened out. Now he has to work. Right. Anyway, thanks so much, everyone. I'm sorry if I couldn't get to your question. They do come by fast and furious. Thanks so much for checking us out on YouTube, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever you are. That's where we are, because we are devoted to Green Bay Packers fans worldwide. Packer Transplants tomorrow at 5 p.m. Be there. Thanks a lot, everyone.